Okay, welcome to the Jinn&Tonic show. It is Friday. It is 8 p.m. UK time, and you are listening to the only
Yay! Welcome to the Jinn&Tonic show
that we have on the planet regarding only Islam. So it says here, this Hangout on Air is live. Hangouts on Air is being discontinued on August the 1st for quick streaming. And no, for quick streaming, try YouTube, webcam, blah, blah, blah. Then you can use something else. So I'm constantly reminded of this, that we have 2 weeks to go and we still haven't done anything. We tried this, but Rob is quite busy at the moment. We need the three of us because he's the one who's taking the technical lead on this. Because quite frankly, I do not know how to set up the streaming via Discord. So maybe I'll hook up with Ike one evening and he needs to show this to me so that I then know and then I can show the others. I don't know how to do this. Anyway, welcome to the Jinn&Tonic show. I have Thunderous is here with us to discuss Islam and only Islam. How are you, my good sir?
I'm fine, thank you. Hello to everybody that's listening into the show. Welcome and thank you for joining us this miserable UK summertime day that we're having. It's cloudy, it's wet, it's damp, it's England, and it's the summer. So what did you expect? However, you've joined the Jinn&Tonic show and hopefully it will warm you up with some of the stories we're going to be reading tonight.
And the thing is, because we're talking behind the scenes, of course, because we are trying to make it interesting, okay? Because it doesn't serve anybody if we go and we say, okay, we are reading the Quran and we are only doing it for us. That doesn't help anyone, does it? So what we have to do is we have to find some balance, okay? What is it that we are trying to do with the Jinn&Tonic show? And of course, my normal sermon is going to be that we are the Jinn&Tonic show and we have the intention about bringing facts to address an ideology. We are here to confront Islam with reality and then get a dialogue so that maybe we can take a step towards each other instead of in opposite directions. We react to claims. We don't attack. We don't attack individual Muslims or Muslims in general. We criticize the claims around bad ideas in Islam, the ideology. And yes, we expose those who lie, deceive, and who are willfully ignorant. And I am quite happy to do so. But at the same time, we try and educate those who've never had the benefit of a scientific education. Okay, so this is what we're trying to do. And instead of being strictly divisive, we try and build bridges, even though I admit, especially me, I often failed because I simply blew it because I got so emotional. I got angry and frustrated with the stupid arguments that I've heard 50 million times before. But I do not want to attack all Muslims, okay? I don't care if a Muslim needs a God to get through the day, and if it makes the Muslim a better person, so be it. Why should I care? It's just that there can be negative consequences. And those negative consequences I do not like. Okay, and this is something that I don't understand, where people say, well, every Muslim is peaceful. And I say, well, what about those who attacked the hotel in Kabul where I was? Well, those were not real Muslims. And in the end, we get the same argument when we talk about ISIS and the connection to Islam, where suddenly Islam doesn't have anything to do with Islam, because people are trying to apologize for this instead of saying, okay, and this is what I had this discussion now with somebody, because we're talking about this idiot in the White House, Trump, and he now went on this rant now with of Mrs. Omar, an ex-Somali woman who is a naturalized American, and she is in Congress, I think, was it Senate? I can't remember. And she was being singled out by the guy in the White House, this guy Trump. And he said, well, why, if she wants to tell them, the whites, how to run the place, why doesn't she first go back to her country, learn how things work, learn how to first fix her country, and then she can come to America and give them advice. But at the moment, they don't want her, she should go back. Now, that's terrible. But the thing is, why does it resonate with so many people? Why is there so much response to the right-wing rhetoric that I get from Geert Wilders, that I get from Marine Le Pen, that I get from all sorts of people, from the AFD in Germany, and so on and so forth? Why is it that the people react positively if somebody says something negative about Muslims? Well, I think it's the insecurity. And I think this is something where I say, okay, I don't care about the negativity within a single individual. I will never go and let it out on a single Muslim. I will go and try and fix the perception of what people have with Islam. And I think this is the big problem, that people don't really understand Islam. They go for the Muslims because this is something that they can see. Okay, I see a woman in a burqa, and I know that she is a Muslim, and therefore I then equivocate whatever happens with this figure. And this is the mistake. And this is what we need to show, that this is not the way to do it. And this is why I go and I look at what Omar is doing, this woman in the States. She has made some really bad remarks coming from Islam, because she says, yes, I am a Muslim and I'm a good Muslim. And this is the problem, because you have this built-in Sharia in Islam, and you have the built-in political ideology which wants to take over. So Islam wants to replace democracy with Islam. And that is something that you cannot, sell to somebody in America if you want to be a Democrat. And this is something that a woman like Omar has to make very, very clear, that she is not somebody who wants to overthrow democracy and works for them. Thunderous, have you been following any of this?
No, I haven't. I've not had the time. But I've got little bits here and little bits there, but not enough for me to have an opinion at the moment.
Okay. Because I find it fascinating, how people react to this, and how there seems to be this primitive thing that xenophobia is something that is built into the human brain, that anything that we don't like, anything we don't know, we need to reject. So this is quite funny. Thank you. Rationalizer uploaded an old J&T show discussion with Muslims. I don't know. I think I'm still subscribed. So he sometimes pops up now and again. I mean, he popped in here the other day because we were talking about something, and he says, let me quickly pop onto the show, because I said to him, listen, I need to run now because I have to do the Jinn&Tonic show. So he says, oh, good, I'll meet you there. So this was quite funny. So I haven't seen this. So thank you for the update. If anybody wants to know something about Islam and the funny stuff about Islam, go and watch the Rationalizer videos. They're still up there. It's funny that his channel never got shut down, and I've lost, I don't know, dozens of channels, and his is still up, even though we're doing, a lot of the same stuff. And yes, I have read some of Ibn Taymiyyah. I would never go and claim that I have read everything there is of Ibn Taymiyyah. Some of the stuff I have read, yes, but there is nothing that sticks out there. Okay, Omar support gay marriage. She's a kafir. She does support gay marriage? I don't know. Okay, there's a lot of stuff that she is not really, I don't know, this is not down my alley. So anyway. So there we go. I am here, starts from Moosestaffahh al-Rashid. Who is Moosestaffahh al-Rashid? Ali Rashid. Moosestaffahh Ali Rashid. Don't tell me that this is rationalized, hiding behind you as a troll. Okay. I added Rob already. To where? The Shias. Oh, okay. All right. So Rob has converted to Islam, to the Shia version of Islam. And we are still looking at Islam. We don't do anything that from other places. We try and let the Quran speak for itself. I try and give my honest opinion, and in many cases, Thunderous has to jump over himself to go and do the same thing, because where I am a die hard in the wool, or whatever you want to call it, non-believer, in other words, a person without a God belief, Thunderous does have some supernatural tendencies, which we don't really talk about because we are focusing on one topic, and that is Islam. And I always laugh if people say, "Yeah, but what about Bible? What about Christianity? Well, it doesn't matter because we're talking about Islam. And just because I gave this definition last time, if I'm testing car A and the claim is that it goes 200 and I find that it's only doing 190, this is a fact. So I am saying I've tested this and this is what I found. There's no need to tell me now that car B only makes 190 and there's nobody making the claim that it goes 200. You see, so there's a huge difference here, and this is what we're trying to do. We're not trying to compare religions. We're not trying to compare religion and Bible and Quran. We're looking at the Quran. We'll try and let the Quran speak for itself, and that's the way we go.
Yeah, can I just add on that though I accept intelligent design as a reality, I'm not here on the show to try and perform some form of polemics or apologetics in defense or to promote the Bible in any way. Though I adhere to it and defend it, this is not the channel I use for that. I am an ex-Muslim with a knowledge of the language, a knowledge of the culture, and certainly an inside knowledge of the religion and how it functions, not just within the texts that the Muslims have, but also within the community and its way of thinking and how it's applied in the community and how I observe the world. I've been an ex-Muslim for over 35 years. I'm 51 years old, so I have considerable experience on the subject. And that's why I'm here, just to offer my experience of Islam, my knowledge of Islam, my experiences, the things I've witnessed, the things I've read over the years, and to offer my input on the show. When it touches on the Bible, it is not in a defense of the Bible. It is a mere, if you like, comparison due to the fact that the Quran claims to be the third book from that lineage. That is all. It's not apologetics, not polemics. It is a comparison from a claim from one book and the difference of the claim in another book, yet there's supposed to be consistency because it's one God. That is all.
Okay, can you just carry on because I'm trying to give a link to a Shia guest scheduled for today.
So just on the subject for the listeners, we have come across some subjects in the past few weeks where there has been a need to refer to the Bible. One of them is obviously the account of Zechariah. That wasn't in defense of the Bible. That was a comparison because there's two Zechariahs in the Bible, the book of Zechariah, and also the guy Zechariah who was John the Baptist's father. Now that Zechariah is actually mentioned in the Quran, and it was a use of comparison to show that whichever Zechariah the Quran was talking about, the timescales were both monumentally wrong. So that wasn't a defense, it was actually a comparison. And that theme will be carried when appropriately from time to time as the material is being discussed. We also mentioned the Talmud. Now, that doesn't mean to say we're defending the Talmud. We're using the Talmud as to prove that the Talmud is really a bulk source of the material that we find in the Quran. Allah claims via Muhammad that 124,000 prophets have been sent into the world. Muhammad being the 124,000th, by implication means 123,999 have already gone forth. So that would mean that there are other books claiming to be from the God of the Bible. I mean, the God of the Quran, which we haven't got any evidence of. So we are only referring to other books, not in defense of those other books, not in promoting those other books, but by way of a comparison to the book that we're looking at now. Now, I'm looking on the notes there. Thunderous, do you know the Fatiha? All blah 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 recently did a video about fake ex-Muslims not knowing it. That's interesting. So if I say Subhanallah wa bihamdika wa tabarakasmaka wa ta'ala jazaka wa la ilaha illa anta a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in ihdinas siratal mustaqim siratal ladzina an'amta alaihim ghayril maghdubi alaihim waladdallin. Now I can say the flipping namaz, mate, all day, 5 times a day. Does that mean say I'm a Muslim? No, it just means I know the namaz and I remember it from when I was taught it from a young age. Knowing the Fatiha does not mean you know Islam or that you don't know Islam or that you were ex-Muslim or not. This is just the usual default Muslim argument against ex-Muslims to try and conjure up your. I would say you're actually a fake Muslim. You're actually not a real Muslim. You're just an atheist troll, then claiming to be a Muslim to try and troll the dialogue that's in the sidebar or on YouTube. So you're a fake Muslim, mate. How can you prove you're a Muslim? You can't prove you're a Muslim. In fact, to prove you're a Muslim, you would have to do what Muhammad ordered you to do. That's kill everyone that leaves this religion. If a man leaves this religion, kill him. How many ex-Muslims have you actually made an effort to kill? None, probably. So that would mean you really are a fake ex-Muslim. That's a fake Muslim. You're more fake Muslim than I'm a fake ex-Muslim, by implication. Anything else, sir? I could go on all night talking to Muslims claiming that I'm an ex-Muslim. I'm not really an ex-Muslim. Okay. Anyway, you say that I'm not a Muslim. I was curious. So has your curiosity been satisfied, Show Me? Can you just acknowledge that in the sidebar quickly before the show starts? Have I proven my point? Have I satisfied your curiosity? He's not typing. Yes, it has. Thank you, Show Me, and thank you for being showing some humility and respect in doing that. I appreciate that. And it's the audiences like you, members like you that listen to the show are the ones that we're trying to get on the show to have an opinion. You're the kind of guy that kind of audience that we require, not the usual default. You're an ex-Muslim arguers and trolls and that. We want intelligent discussion. After all, as someone was saying, there's something about Thunderous should sing us some verses. If you actually listened to a few shows earlier, we were I actually did do that, much to the chagrin of Stops. He didn't appreciate it at all. But that has actually, we have actually made an effort. Rob's made a very good point. Well, just before we start the show, I will make this. Rob's made a very good point that when we are reading it in English, we have to bear in mind that when the surahs and ayahs were revealed to Muhammad, they were revealed, or he was presenting them in a very poetic fashion. So that's translated into English, not transliterated, because there isn't a word for word like. So it is translated, and the poetic rhythm is forward. But I will make an effort at some point to try and sing a verse, depending how big the verse is.
Okay, we have been joined. Please start please start Manikam.
Hello, can you hear me?
What do we call you?
Call me Moosestaffahh.
So Moosestaffahh. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Hey Moosestaffahh, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys for inviting me to this show, and thank you. Stop spamming and the giant. What is your name, sir?
Thunderous.
Thunderous. Yes, Thunderous. Now it's here. Now it's appearing. Okay. Yes. So Thunderous and Stop Spamming. Thank you so much. Basically, I'm. Where can we begin?
Well, the thing is that you this is the prime example. Okay, this is what I like so much about the Jinn&Tonic show, where people pop in. I would love for you to tell us how you actually came across this and blah blah blah, and then what happens? Somebody says, "Well, because I was making a comment the last time about the Umayyads, about the history, a little bit of that, or maybe somebody hears this on when I was talking to Harris Sultan, and said, well, hang on, I've actually got a more precise, more updated, or more in-depth version of what this guy has just said. Let me go to the Jinn&Tonic show and correct this." And I think this is brilliant. I love this so much that somebody can come and say, listen, I've got something to include. I want to make a proposal here, and I am prepared to come on. I'm prepared to do the research and demonstrate something and just something that I've prepared, and I'd like to show this to people. And I think this is so brilliant. This is what I love about the Jinn&Tonic show, that because we have people who come in, who are interested, and who go and integrate, do the work, and then they present something. And that is brilliant. So, Moosestaffahh, thank you very much. What you're going to do is, and I put this as a little reminder for myself on the side here, we're talking about the Shia, the historical background of the Shia Islam.
Yes.
And then in particular, about a guy, Zain Abidin,
Zainul Abidin.
Political relationship with Abdul Malik, because this is something that I was talking about in another show, and I would love to hear what you have to say. But first of all, how did you hear about the Umayyad and the history, and how did you hear about the Jinn&Tonic show?
Well, about the Umayyad history, basically, I've practically read this history a lot since childhood, because growing up as a Shia Muslim, you basically, the thing that I like, at least with Shia Islam, is that at least there's an attempt to research on the history and be comparatively honest. Again, not saying that it is completely honest. No, there is some bias in that side of history. That I admit, that there's a bias in Shia version of history. However, there is still some research to back it up in comparative terms. However, that in itself is a huge like topic on its own. About what do you call it, the Jinn&Tonic show, I was watching Stop Spamming's live stream with Vidu Wits. Vidu Wits, I follow Hassan Radwan, I follow the Masked Arab, and I get these, you know, and a lot of you guys have a lot of knowledge, and it was very intellectually, you know, appealing and a very intellectually stimulating, as we would describe it, conversations that I had. And one thing that I noticed with Stop Spamming proposed, and it was a very interesting idea, that this Muhammad character did not exist. And that was a new idea that I myself did not consider, that, wait, there is a possibility that this character may have also been made up, because there are no alternative versions of history. And then in that conversation, you guys Stop Spamming and Vidu mentioned the Jinn&Tonic show, and then I heard I saw a few we call videos about the Quran chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, and the 3rd chapter as well. And yeah, I was just listening to the conversations, and I actually, you know, somewhat agree that there's this weird reaction to a criticism of Islam, like why it's not necessarily an attack on Muslims, but it's just a critical analysis, or a critical, you're asking questions, and the Jinn&Tonic show is asking the questions. I don't personally see anything wrong with that, that you all have the right to ask questions, and you deserve to get the right answers. And unfortunately, with today's world, we have I apologize for this word, a shit ton of apologetics that, you know, is more used to dodge the questions rather than, you know, actually answer them properly.
Okay, thank you for that. And don't worry, this is a free speech zone, so if you want to use the fucking word shit, go ahead and do it. Are you aware that you are still showing Please Start Minicam? Is that intentional?
Oh, wait, let me just check. Please start.
I'm just, you know, throwing it out there, just pointing it out, just in case you were not aware of that.
I don't think I'm aware of this.
Okay, so can I just ask, Moosestaffahh, what is your background then, and where do you stand with Islam, and why? Okay,
my background is I'm a Pakistani. I'm a Shia, like, again, culturally, I would say I'm a Shia Muslim. Ideologically, I'm sort of, I'm open to new possibilities, because the current narrative is, it just doesn't make any sense. And I've researched this, and I admit that there are things that need to evolve, that there are things that need to change, and there are things that people try to cover up about Islam and are afraid to admit the dark side of Islam. I found this also with, I'm currently living in Canada. I have a lot of Christian friends, a lot of Jewish friends, a lot of atheist friends, and I find that the Muslim population has more in common with the Christian population than they realize about their, you know, what do you call it? About their, you know, the way they make their excuses, like how authentic we are. Like, it's basically sounding like my superhero, my God is better than your God. And it is a very annoying conversation. It's like, can we please get along, guys? Oh, and someone tried to convert me to Christianity. They spent till 5 in the morning trying to convince me that Jesus was my God. And I'm like, all right, sure. Now, isn't it time to go to bed?
But are you still an active Muslim today?
I still practice because I find peace sometimes in prayer because I see it as a form of meditation. I still practice it for family reasons because I still love my family, so I still participate. Just that my ideology is very different. What's inside of me, what I think, is very different, and personally, I don't want to go around bullying people, telling them that you're wrong and you're right. And how unless they if they try to shove their opinions about Islam down my throat, then I crack my knuckles and say, okay, buddy, you asked for it. And then I actually give them a verbal, what do you call it? A verbal destruction, as you call it, about, how not authentic your sources are, and your own sources are saying all these disturbing things, but you just choose to believe what your local imam tells you.
Mm.
Yeah. Can I just ask a question? And I appreciate your candidness. First of all, actually, I've lived in Pakistan as well, so for about 6 months. Whereabouts in Pakistan were you?
I lived in 3 cities actually. I was born in Karachi, but I grew up in Islamabad. I often visited Lahore because I had relatives there. So these 3 cities I've visited or lived in the most.
Thank you for that. I lived in Lahore while I was there. My second question is then, would you say then, just so for the sake that so stops myself aware, not that I'm trying to, we don't, even though I adhere to them or uphold or would say that for me the Bible is the truth, I'm not here to try and promote that in the slightest. But for the sake of the discussion that we're having, where do you stand on, say, intelligent design? And I use the term intelligent design as a minimal commitment to accepting whether there is a God or not. So I don't want to discuss who God is, but do you accept that there is a God, or do you have doubts, or are you or do you believe in evolution?
I have a very complex belief. It seems for me, I try to see it in a more, I don't know if it is a scientific way of seeing it. I just see God as not a he, she, it, or a person, but rather an it. I see it as a center of everything, the center of universes, a source of energy. So that source of energy is channeling everything. So that's how I see this higher being. And I admit, I'm not even sure how many higher beings there are, because for 300,000 years, we were polytheists. Monotheism is just 2,000 years old. So we're not even sure how many celestial things are there, if there are any. So I'm in this position where we just do not have sufficient evidence to say, confirm a position. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. And as I say, it isn't to try and get a confession out of you or anything like that. It's just so that everybody on the panel and also the audience are aware which points we're all coming from as the discussion progresses.
Okay, then should we go and listen to what you have to contribute here? Because I find that is a very interesting topic, and I'm always very happy to have people come in and take as much time as they want, give us some insight into a specific topic, and this is I think this is highly interesting too, because I myself have problems understanding not the rituals, I mean, that is quite obvious, but the fundamental differences, the historical differences between Shia and Sunni Muslims.
Absolutely. I'll briefly touch over Shia Islam in a nutshell, because as you realize, Islam has not only sects, but sects within sects as well. Like even with Sunni Islam, you have the Hanafi, Hanbali, Shafi, and Maliki sects too. And then there's like a few more differences too. With Shia Islam, there's two main bodies. There's the Imami Shia and then the Zaydi Shia. So Imami Shia is like someone who believes that there are the either 12 imams or
12. I
14.
was going to say, is that the same as the 12ers? Yeah. Or now
Yeah.
the 13ers.
Oh, there's 13ers, there's 7ers. It's weird. Zaydis don't believe in the concept of imamat. They're more similar to Hanafi sect of Sunni Islam. Then amongst the Imami Shias, you have a few more divisions: the 12ers or the Jafari or Asna Ashri, 3 different names, and you have the Ismailis, and then I had a few other groups that also have gone extinct or were absorbed into the Shia, the 12er or the 7er. With the 12er, they believe in the 12 imams who are infallible. They're direct descendants of Muhammad Ali, Ali being the first one, his wife Fatima, who was the daughter of Muhammad. And from their descendants, we have also the 12th Imam, who's the Mahdi, who's the promised savior. Whereas with the 7ers, the Ismailis, they still have a current leadership going. The Agha Khan, if you've heard of him. Currently, we have the Agha Khan IV, who's the leader of the Ismaili community. Even his history is very, very questionable at best. I did my research too. It raised a few eyebrows, but that itself, this topic requires way too much discussion, a longer discussion, because this is it's very like convoluted. It's very like, because of this, there's so many divisions. So in this one, we'll focus on the Jafari sect because this is in regards to Zainul Abidin's teachings. This Zainul Abidin character was the, as you know, the first Imam was Ali, the second Imam was Hassan, his first son, the second son was Hussein, and then Hussein's son, Zainul Abidin, is the fourth. Then you have till the 12th, basically, like the Muhammad Baqir, Jafar al-Sadiq, Musa Kazim, Ali al-Rada, I believe Muhammad Taqi, Ali al-Nafi, Hassan Askari, and then you had the Mahdi.
What is the time period that you're spanning now?
This is the time period. Okay, so the time period is there. The Imams lived between about if you count all the Imams, that is, this is between the 7th century. So Ali was born in 600, between the 7th century to up about like somewhere in the 800s. So to speak, because this is 12 generations. So 800 something, this time period spans about. However, the focus will be on Zainul Abidin, and he lived between 659 AD, approximately, up until 713 AD. So this is this little time frame right here. His grandfather was Ali.
But hang on, the touching point, because we need to be aware that there are 2 different parallel developments going on, and this is something that I had a big problem with understanding in the beginning. So I'm hoping that I'm making sense for others at the moment. While we are normally talking about the Sunni version, which starts with Muhammad and goes through the 4 righteous caliphs and blah blah blah, and then we get to the Umayyads, and this is the first and last time when there is a meeting point between Sunni and Shia Islam, because Muawiyah is the one who actually killed the leader, or he didn't do it himself. He had somebody else and paid them for it to stage some sort of an unrest, and then this kill and so on. But this is the last time that there was actually a very close touching point between the 2.
Absolutely. Again, this is more ideologically speaking, that is.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the sense that the split wasn't official, it was more just a political ideology how it started. Because when Muhammad died, as you know, even the Masked Arab in one of his videos, Takfir, Infighting Amongst Muslims, he points out that when Muhammad died, all hell practically broke loose. And there was this weird power struggle between Ali versus Abu Bakr, that who was the righteous one to succeed. Ali, again, from the Shia perspective, Ali waited for the rest of the Ummah to actually pray the janazah for Muhammad. Nobody came for 3 days, so Ali buried him himself. And the Ummah was too busy deciding who the next leader was. Again, I'm giving you the Shia version, yes?
And Ali is not the son. And a lot of people make this mistake. He
Yeah.
is the son-in-law of Muhammad. Okay,
Law.
not the son, because a lot of people make this mistake to think that he's the son. No, he's not. Son-in-law.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a son-in-law and a cousin too, because he's the son of Abu Talib, who raised Muhammad himself. Abu Talib, this is Abu Talib's fourth son, and Abu Talib had like three other sons. And with Ali was also himself, like according to Shia legends or Shia historiography, however you want to look at, Ali was raised by Muhammad. So I think partially raised by Muhammad. So it feels like there is this father-son connection already. So I think that's why it's very easy to confuse Ali for him being his son, but
Exactly.
Muhammad himself declared he's just a brother, or a distant brother, that is, a cousin. And he's his son-in-law because he was happy to marry his daughter to Ali, and basically he's just the son-in-law, and he was supposed to be the spiritual successor to Muhammad. So I feel like that's where the confusion comes in. Like, he's only the spiritual successor, but not necessarily the son. So that actually answers the question.
Yeah, I just jumped in because I know that a lot of people, get thrown off by this, and this is why I jump in just to clarify this, so that people don't make the same mistakes. So that people can learn from my mistakes.
Absolutely. No, there's it gets very confusing with the family trees too. Even I pointed out that you thought Abdul Malik was the son of Yazid. No, he's the son of Marwan. Marwan took over, but then Yazid's son was Muawiyah bin Yazid, who also died within 40 days. So that
exactly.
Yeah. So it's very easy to confuse because it's not very well documented. But if you have to like look into the details. Like, you have to squint your eyes and look into the details, because the caliphs preceding Abdul Malik had very short reigns due to the civil war. That is, it was a three-way civil war between Ibn Zubair, Mukhtar, and the Umayyads. So it was a three-way fighting. So it's very easy to get that jumbled up, part of history jumbled up. Back to the Shia Sunni split. So yes, so there was this disagreement. The Shias believed that Ali should have been the rightful successor. However, it took like the first three. Shia Muslims don't recognize the first three as the rightful caliphs, because they feel like these caliphs usurped Ali's right to be the leader of the community. Ali got his chance as the fourth caliph, and unfortunately, even during his time, it was a 4.5-5-year period. It was just filled with revolts, because there was a power tussle between Ali and Muawiyah, and that's also when Ali dies, Ali gets killed. Hassan, his son Hassan, takes over as a caliph for only about 6 to 18 months approximately. Historians vary in their accounts. And then there was an agreement with Muawiyah that Hassan, because Hassan did not have as many supporters, whereas Muawiyah was the more popular, leader at that time. And basically, there was an agreement that, there's going to be no bloodshed, no nothing. We're not going to be fighting with each other. So there was an agreement signed between Hassan and Muawiyah. But then Muawiyah, when he passed away, he declared his son the next caliph. Many, many people had an objection to that, because his son was said to be not of the best of characters, so to speak. He wasn't the most fit. He's not the most pious to be called Amir al-Mu'mineen, or the leader of the believers, or the king of the believers, or Amir of the believers, however you want to translate that. Then there was the power struggle between Yazid. Yazid saw Hussein, the second son. By this time, Hassan and Ali had already passed away. Hussein, this is around 680 AD. He confronts Hussein, and Hussein has sort of like a protest to protest the Yazid Caliphate in Karbala. This is all the way in Iraq. He travels from Medina to Iraq, and it's a completely one-sided affair. Yazid's soldiers just brutally massacres them, brutally. And then the survivor of that battle, two main figures. One is Imam Hussein's son, eldest son, Zain al-Abidin, and his aunt Zainab, and a few women folk. So Zain al-Abidin is chained with the women folk. They're dragged to Damascus, all the way to Damascus to see Yazid. And that's where the Yazid, due to public pressure, gives them a platform to speak. Like, it first gives them a platform to speak, but when they speak, they sort of cause like a dissident, because there's this disagreement within Yazid's court too, because you have people sympathizing with the descendants of Muhammad, because their thing is, can you guys hear me? Hello?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've just muted it so that we don't disturb you. Yeah, definitely. No,
sorry.
we're listening in anticipation.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. So there's the big that's where they hold the first. There's a thing called majlis in Shia Islam. A majlis is just also a gathering to mourn the death of Imam Hussein, and that's where the Ashura trend started. It was in its infancy then, and then every year on the 10th of Muharram, because the Battle of Ashura or Karbala took place, so Shia Muslims mourn, commemorate, because the grandson of Muhammad was killed in this battle. And many historians mark this as the official starting point of the separation between Shia Islam and Sunni Islam, because Shia Islam from then on did not accept any caliph after as the rightful successor, and they opposed ideologically, and even it grew into, and spiritually as well, did not like any caliph that succeeded Yazid after, and neither the Umayyads nor the Abbasids, they rejected all of them, and they felt that Muhammad's family, the Alid dynasty or the Ali's descendants, were robbed of their rightful place as rulers, and Shia Muslims feel that we would have been in a better place if these people were our rightful rulers. So this is the part where I introduced Zain al-Abidin. He's the only survivor. He didn't participate in the battle because he was sick. He was unable to fight, and he's dragged in chains from Karbala to Damascus. So he's going back to Zain al-Abidin. Like, he was about 20 at this time, and he gave a speech, and his aunt also gave a speech, and people thought that, oh, this sounds like Ali talking, because he had very similar mannerisms to Ali himself. So Shia Muslims believe that it was Zain al-Abidin who sort of started this, who actually brought Islam back. Again, it is only in the writings. They never tell you in the lectures, because I feel like Imam Zain al-Abidin's extremely underrated if you want to count, if you see him as a historical figure, extremely underrated when it comes to the building the foundations of Islam. Because at that time, he was a very respected religious authority figure. When he was released from jail, Yazid released Zain al-Abidin due to public pressure, and he did not want, and there was already the fitna that was going on. So he released Zain al-Abidin, and Zain al-Abidin went on. He lived between Damascus and then went to Medina, where he spent his life preaching. And numerous people approached him, like Ibn Zubair and Mukhtar approached him as to legitimize their revolt against the Umayyads. So the Mukhtar movement, it also connects here. The Mukhtar movement also starts the Tawabin. There's also the Tawabin, or the repenters movement, that starts within 3 years of Karbala, where there's it's Shia Islam, sort of like this is where the foundation happened, where we are repenting that we did not help Hussein and his family, because we could not do so. We were locked in jails by Ibn Ziyad, and Yazid had locked us in jails, and now we have been released. So now we are repenting, we're crying. And then there was this entire movement. Mukhtar also had political, incentives, like he had intentions. However, so this is where this struggle between the two sects ideologically starts to like boil up, and this is where it's, you know, officially splits, I feel
But
like.
Mustafa, but
Yeah.
if we're now like somewhere between the turn of the century, 8th to 9th century, right? So there must be a Quran around. What kind of a Quran did they have, or what is it that they were using as a basis?
Absolutely. So Shia Muslims accept the Quran for what it is. However, there's many scholars who agree that there have been tamperings with the Quran itself, like the main Quran. And there's a misconception that Shias have a different Quran. There's a huge misconception. No, we agree to the same Quran. However, we are honest enough, like at least with the scholars, not with the folk. At least with the scholars, they're honest enough to admit that there have been some tamperings. There have been things added on during the time of Uthman or Usman. So with the Quran, we have what we call a lot of other books too. We have the main book also. It's a book of supplications called Sahifa Sajjadiyah, or it is called the Psalms of Islam. And it is said to be authored by Zainul Abidin, and it's just it's a list of prayers that you have. So the prayers themselves touch on many topics, such as like, you know, what kind of prayer should I do if I'm on the day of sacrifice or on Friday, on you know, if I want to praise God, if I want to you know, pray it on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So this is where, you know, it's called the sister Quran. The Sahifa Sajjadiyah is called the sister Quran because that's where a lot of Shia du'as, or the prayer, or the sort of like the Psalms come from. So it's like sort of an add-on to the existing Quran. So it's not like saying that, oh, this is our Quran. No, this is just an add-on to the Quran itself. And with Shia Muslims, with the main Quran, with Sunni Muslims and Shia Muslims, the main fundamental difference comes where, at least from what scholars say, Sunni Islam tends to take verses of the Quran in a literal sense. Shia Islam is a bit different as an ideology, which says this is more of an allegorical. It's very allegorical. We don't have to take this to the literal T. We don't have to take this literally. And with Shia Muslims, even to this day, we continue to at least evolve our laws, even though I don't agree with most of them. We still continue to at least evolve those laws based on the time periods that we're living in.
Okay, so do I understand this correct? You at the time, everybody was a Quranist, okay, because there was nothing else.
Exactly.
Then you did not develop into the way that that somebody came up with a hadith and said, okay, now we need to explain the Quran. But you had this Sayyadiyah, which is like the companion book, which gives you the details of what you should do, but not as a way of explaining the Quran.
No, it is not a way to explain the Quran at all, actually.
Okay, so I got that right. Okay.
Absolutely. It's just sort of an add-on. It's more of a prayer and more of praising God. It's more focused on praising God. And, you know, it has the same apocalyptic feel as you have with the Quran, because the Quran has this weird that, oh, the world's going to end, turn to God, protect yourselves, be chaste, be modest, blah, blah, blah. And same thing with Sahifa Sajjadiyah. Follows a very similar theme. It does not get into any personal details about Muhammad. Like there's a few chapters where the author of the Quran is like, curse this specific person, curse that specific person because they pissed me off. But with the Sahifa Sajjadiyah, it's a bit different because it's not focusing on that. It does not even bother with that stuff. It's just prayers, praising to God, and, you know, what should I do? Like, what are the prayers that
they're references to the Quran?
Yeah, they're not references to the Quran at all. Just it's sort of like, you know, this we can use as rituals for like marriage, for like other.
But it's not based in any way on the concept of this Tawheed, for example. There is nothing. This is totally separate.
Oh, it is. It is Tawheed. Yes, like it is strongly with the topics, it is strongly with the Tawheed itself. However, it is more to do with asking God for help rather than, like even there's a chapter 17 says against Satan. If you want protection against Satan, for example, there's an entire supplication. We call it supplication.
Okay, but this is very similar then to the Hadith. Okay, because you have the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a supplication, except this is very focused on the supplication, whereas in the Hadith they also go into the background as to what happened.
Yeah, the Qudsi.
Yeah. So the Sahif Sajadi itself is very vague. If you look at it from face value, it's extremely vague. So
okay, did this and Pio asked a very good question. Did this Sajjadiyya, did this also make it back to Damascus, for example? Was there any kind of backlash or was there any reaction to this?
Actually, this actually helped. Surprisingly, it helped local people because at the time of war, there was so much destruction. Women were raped, children were killed, all that stuff happened, and it sort of like was sort of a solace for it's sort of like a recovery phase for the public. And even Abdul Malik had no problem with this book at all. In fact, Abdul Malik and Zainul Abidin have a very complex relationship when it comes to their histories, because I wish I could find like primary sources, but this is a secondary sources for this specific story. So, okay, I'll read you the story that I actually wrote down. So it starts off with, what do you call it? And even Abdul Malik bin Marwan acknowledges that in the area of religious sciences, devotion, and piety, he says to Zainul Abidin, you have been granted which that no one before you other than your ancestors were. So Zainul Abidin, what do you call it? Okay, so Abdul Malik is, according to this story, that is, Rome is imposing their coinage in quotation marks. Remember this term, imposing their coinage. Even though I personally feel the coinage was already there. It was Roman coinage. Was imposing their coinage on Muslim lands. So Abdul Malik saw that there were two dangers with the Muslim community, or the believers community, because I don't think the term Muslim was even alive. They were the believers were exposed to other cultures, and there was a need for an identity because they had no identity of their own. This is what Abdul Malik recognized, and even Zainul Abidin also recognizes. And then the wealth and prosperity sort of like made Muslims a bit too proud, or what do you call it, vain, that it was sort of like a threat to the spiritual foundations of Islam. According to this account, it was a threat. I see, like, you can look at it both ways. Zainul Abidin could be seen as either, from a Muslim perspective, a revivalist of the practices of Islam, which had been threatened with, or he practically founded the earlier practices of Islam, which you call it. So Zainul Abidin is sought for help from Abdul Malik, that what he should do about the situation where the Muslims are exposed to other cultures and we don't have an identity of our own, or even a spiritual identity of our own. So Zainul Abidin, he has a son, Muhammad Baqir. So he writes a letter with instructions. I wish we had those letters because nobody has found those letters yet. But there were letters with secret instructions to Abdul Malik. And these instructions involved, first, you have to introduce an Islamic currency.
Okay, but Abdul Malik is sitting in Damascus still.
Yes, he's in Damascus. Zainul Abidin went back to Medina. So he's sending his son on horseback to deliver the letter to Abdul Malik, because they're communicating via letters. And sometimes they also like visit, Zainul Abidin also visits Damascus from time to time. So basically, so there's Zainul Abidin, sort of like, he then goes to, first there's, what do you call it? The instructions involved, you have to have the Islamic coinage with the mention of Muhammad. So
but it did. This is what happened, yeah.
Yeah, so, and it did happen. And then there's also in Masjid al-Nabawi, he started like doing, like, sort of like doing ideological research, or this, sort of like coming up with du'as and all that.
Okay. Is he then also the originator of the inscription on the Dome of the Rock?
Exactly. So that's where the Dome of Rock comes from. The idea.
Okay. Yeah.
Al-Abidin was the one who came up with that idea. However, he kept his identity, according to Shia Muslims, he preferred to keep his identity away from the politics and away from, the mainstream, because he suffered so much agony, he saw so much, he was already mentally a lot disturbed. So he would let, others, implement his ideas. His ideas were implemented. And what's interesting, that he also writes another book called Risalat al-Haqooq, or called the Treatise of Rights. And want to know what's funny, what's mentioned in the Treatise of Rights? There's 4 things I found in my research that is mentioned in this Treatise of Rights. So the very first thing, ritual prayer. The second thing, fasting. The third thing, alms or sadaqah. And the fourth thing, animal sacrifice. So he sort of
that's from the Jews.
And he sort of adopted it to,
yes, that makes sense. Yeah.
Establish their own version of the ritual prayer. So this is where he mentions this, like how to, this is what you have to do. But the way it's mentioned is super vague. The instructions are still, I feel like, are not complete. However, Zain al-Abidin also had the title called Sajjad, because he would go on sujood a lot, like in praise of Allah. Like he originated the sujood, or what do you call it? You're going down, you're prostrating, your head is on the ground, or your head is on a sajda, for example, or where you're supposed to prostrate. So he sort of like created that culture of prostrating your head to the ground towards the Qibla. That is.
Okay, but it sounds like people are taking elements of existing, let's say, rituals or ideas, and then sort of massaging them, mixing them up a bit, and then somebody says, "Hey, I've got an idea. How about it?" And this is then what you find 100 years later as the instructions for what you need to do. This is what it's like. This sounds like it's the originating moment for both Shia and Sunnis for their various rituals, because they're very similar. And I think this is the common ancestor, as it were.
Yeah. So Zain al-Abidin is sort of like the figure that sort of like started, because here's another chapter on Sahifa Sajjadi about Muhammad. So how I like the chapter itself, basically it has how many verses? Oh, Jesus Christ, it has 48 verses. So, he's in this chapter, it's the second supplication, or the second chapter, however you want to say it. And it's about Muhammad. Because the Muhammad in the Quran, if you notice, is extremely vague. It's like you don't get, like, even his name, Muhammad, could have been a title, basically. Now, this one specifically also says, through Muhammad, his prophet. Like, praise belongs to God who was kind to us through Muhammad, his prophet. So that's where it begins with. So it also explains, like, in very poetic form, that it provides a narrative. Like, it seems like a summary of the Seerah. However, the Seerah was written 64, 100 years later, or about this. So this one says that Muhammad is the one who cut off ties of the womb for the sake of religion, and actually accepted those further away into him for your sake, or for God's sake. And then and then he says he rose up against them. So he either sounds like a revolutionary, and he becomes strong despite the weakness. And then he praises God, but because of you, despite his weakness, he became strong. And then, and he also, like, he fought against them in the center of their cities, and he attacked them in the midst of their dwellings until your command prevailed. So, and your word rose up through the idolaters were aware, and O God, so raise him because of his labors for your sake to the highest degree of your garden, which is paradise, that none may equal him in station, none may level him, and no angel brought nigh prophet, and inform him it also praises the household of Muhammad, because this is where the Shia ideology also praises not only Muhammad, but the household of Muhammad too. So And you provided his community with an excellent intercession. So he mentions intercession here as well. And you art, O keeper of promises, faithful to your word, changes evil deeds into manifold good deeds, you art bounty abounding. So, and also, yes, it mentions that Muhammad had migrated to the land of exile. It's very vague. It doesn't mention Medina. It doesn't mention any city. He says that he leaves the home of his saddlebags and walkway of his feet, but then he goes to the remoteness of, like, in the place of remoteness, the land of exile. So it sort of like provides a very vague, if you've never read the seerah, this provides a sort of like a vague, what do you call it, narrative of the story of Muhammad, so to speak.
Yeah, but it's more description, right?
Yeah, it's very vague, but it's kind of like starting to get a little more descriptive. And then the seerah, Ibn Ishaq's seerah comes 764, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. So this is, again, based on sources, this is written around like 700s, in the 700s, basically. So this is sort of like, I feel like this may also be the creation of, also, however you want to see it. Like, you want to see it as either reviving the character or creation of the legend of Muhammad, so to speak. So this is like sort of the start of that movement, so to speak. Yeah, so that's the general gist of it. So yeah, do you have any questions or?
Brilliant. First of all, I want to say thank you very much for this.
Yeah.
This for me, I mean, you've closed a couple of gaps that I had. So brilliant. Thank you very much for that. If there is anybody who has questions from the chat, now's the time to ask them. Then I will pass them on to Moosestaffah. Thunderous, what do you have to say?
No, to be honest with you, it's a welcome relief to have somebody on the show who speaks so eloquently and calmly in defense of what he believes and also his knowledge, and to speak to somebody who actually has a knowledge of what they actually believe and their roots of their faith or the faith that they come from, which is quite refreshing. I mean, particularly with the kind of audience that we've dealt with in the past. So, Moosestaffah, it's a welcome respite from our usual. And I say that sincerely. I come from a Sunni background. My knowledge of Shia, the Shia faith, is very limited. To put it succinctly, I always thought that the schism became because, from my understanding of, I've not looked into it too much, but from the brief moment I looked at it, I certainly concluded that basically one of them wanted, the Shia branch of Islam wanted to have the Imams come from like a genealogical line, whereas the Sunni Muslims wanted it from a democratic political line. So that was basically a simplistic way of looking at it. And hence I didn't look too much into it. Other than is it the Karmatayans? I may be pronouncing that incorrectly, where there was a brief period about the 8th century or the 10th century where they stole the black stone from Mecca and then they returned it. Do you know about that account?
I actually read different versions of that account, and what's funny is that there's actually a link between Zainul Abidin and the Black Stone as well, too. I was surprised to find this as well, because there was a lot of like the Hajjaj bin Yusuf. You've heard the story. Is this referring to Hajjaj bin Yusuf destroying the Kaaba? Is that the one?
That's right, yes.
Absolutely. So Hajjaj bin Yusuf, even Shia writers hate this man. Like they also hate Abdul Malik, in a sense that Abdul Malik was the one who appointed this general, and he's the general who destroyed the Kaaba, basically, with the catapults and everything. And Imam Zainul Abidin assisted with not only the reconstruction of the Kaaba, but also he was responsible for putting back the black stone, so to speak, because the black stone was stolen. It's very vague, but there's like so many different accounts that tell us different stories. But like in this one, he's sort of like, wait, let me just actually find it, because I'm trying to find a specific source. I have so much, my writings are all over the place. Let's see here. So not this one. All right. So basically, yeah. So I'll send it to Stop Spamming if I find a reference point. But like the story, the gist of it is that Zain al-Abidin was the one who helped reconstruct the Kaaba, helped with the black stone, putting it back. Actually sought back the black stone and you want to put it back. Right? Again, this is only based on Shia sources. Bear in mind. There could be biases too, because I've read both accounts, Sunni and Shia sources. There are biases on each side, but I feel like the truth is somewhere in the middle. Like something like that did happen. Someone did put it back.
Yeah, I think for what you're saying, the truth is in the middle. I have a phrase. It's not my phrase. It's something that I got from a reporter in a country called Mark Thomas, where he said, "If it's a lie, how far away is it from the truth to make them think that they can get away with the lie?" So even with a fantasy or an exaggeration, how far is it away from the truth to make them think that they can get away with it? So, yeah, I always found it quite interesting that account, because from my perspective, objectively looking, if Mecca was supposed to be as holy as it's supposed to be in Islamic tradition, going all the way from Adam to Noah, then to Abraham, and then following on to Muhammad, why would Allah allow all of this to take place in the first place, which is supposed to be the holiest place on earth? So for me, as an ex-Muslim, or certainly at the time as I was growing up and understanding these things, because the more conscious, as you grow older, the more self-aware you are in the faith that you're growing up in, and you have to make a point whether you're going to accept it as reality or not. So these were the accounts that I was looking at that made me think, well, I can't see any credibility in this religion when this one, as well as many other areas, this is one of the areas for me that didn't stand right or sit right with me, that the holiest place on earth can have such a checkered history. That's assuming, you mentioned something earlier on in the show when you first started about how much of an impact it was that the existence of Muhammad had on you, where now there is much in the way of debate as to whether he existed or not. But at the same time, now in later years, I think it's through a researcher by the name of Dan Gibson who has questioned the originality of Mecca now. I don't know if you've come across that information.
I have. Petra, his theory, which I actually find very possible. I personally am a fan of that theory, unless there's evidence otherwise, because as the evidence points, Petra is the ancient city of Petra may have been the foundation or the founding city of Mecca, because with the Sunnah, with the later writings, how they describe Mecca, and what Stop Spamming also mentioned in his chat with Vito Witz, the reality of Mecca and what's written about it does not match.
Exactly. So when you add what we are finding out now, and certainly the information of the Kamatians, and their destroying of Mecca, stealing the black stone, destroying the black stone, or breaking it, certainly, then returning it. That whole story narrative, for me, if this is supposed to be a religion of truth, it has a very checkered history behind it.
Oh, it has a bloody history, if you've got
it. Mustafa, why do you think Shias go to Mecca?
Oh, Shias are actually sometimes there is the Saudi government does not give you a visa if you're a Shia Muslim.
Yeah, they try and restrict it now, because of the political squabbles. But from a theological reason or standpoint, why is it? Because of course the basis would be the imams and not necessarily Muhammad, because Muhammad is just somebody, was just a voice piece for the Quran, for the Shias. He didn't do any of the rest what the Sunnis attribute to him.
Yeah, with the imams now, what's interesting with the imams is that we have two kinds of pilgrimages now. This is not the Hajj and Umrah we're talking about, because in Shia Islam, it's more important for you to go to Karbala for pilgrimage, if you think about it. Karbala,
exactly. Yeah.
That's where our founding, our faith was founded, and the fact that we visit Imam Hussein and his companions' graves, and we sort of pray to their graves. We not pray facing it, but we still pray towards the Qibla, the existing Qibla. But we still what do you call it? Offer our supplications. We kiss the outside of the grave, and that ritual. in many Shia writers, that ritual is far more important than Hajj itself.
Okay, that explains it.
Yes, so that's where
Okay.
the ideological split comes.
Well,
Also, yeah.
I just want to say there's a lot of differences because, for example, Shias are quite okay, for example, to have, to sort of to condense the prayers to 3 prayers a day instead of 5 prayers. They are not so adamant about the drawings of Muhammad. There's a lot of leniency. There's quite a few differences.
I'm glad you brought that up. Stop. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just went on what Stops was saying. I'm really glad you brought that up, because the comment I wanted to make was as well that as I was growing up, I found that the Sunni religion that I grew up with was belligerent. It was mean. It was nasty. It was belligerent. It was hypocritical. It was poisonous, venomous. Any negative euphemism you want to use. That's how I found Sunni Islam. Shia Islam, on the other hand, I always found to be very serene, very calm.
Well, not if you're in Tehran and
No,
it's Ushura. Let me tell you.
Tehran is a different story altogether.
But I'm talking about my own personal experience, that Shia Muslims did not tend to behave the way that Sunni Muslims behaved. Or you very rarely hear, maybe you could argue it's down to numbers and demographics, but I always found that the Shia Muslim was in no way shared the same personality traits as far as Sunni Muslims are concerned. So I just wanted to bring that up. And the way you're talking at the moment, Moosestaffah, is kind of for me, it's like a reminiscence of the past when I used to talk to a Shia Muslim in consideration to the Sunni Muslims that we've had on the show. You're a refreshing change, and I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you so much. That is extremely appreciated. There within Shia politics, again, we do have our extremists like Tehran that was mentioned, the Imam. I am not a huge fan of that guy. I roll my eyes at his teachings. Some of them I agree with, some of them I disagree with. So, not
Do you know the Green Book?
Is it the Tahrirul Wasila?
I don't know, the little Green Book, Ayatollah Khomeini's.
No, that's Gaddafi's, isn't it? The Green Book. That's Colonel Gaddafi's manifesto.
Oh, okay. No, I'm not aware of the Colonel Gaddafi's manifesto. I'm not aware of that.
I've got a copy of the book. It's a fascinating read.
Really?
It really is. Yeah. If it's only a small little manifesto. I recommend it to read anybody. And when you read it, you'll understand why the Western governments wanted to get rid of him.
Yeah, I definitely would love to check that out, actually. Like, I'd love to. We even have a Gaddafi stadium in Lahore. Apparently, Gaddafi was the one who donated money to create a cricket stadium. And I've been to that stadium. It's actually an amazing stadium. And it's one of the most famous ones, actually. That's where World Cup finals have taken place. And yeah, I know it's backtracking, but like, Gaddafi seems to be a very funny figure, I would say, in the light of history, at least.
In the light of Western history and Western propaganda, there wasn't a fanboy of his. But then, really, I think you've really got to look at, say, have a read of if you got the time. It'll probably take you a week to get through it, less than that. His Green Book. I don't support politics in the slightest, but sometimes if there's a phrase, condemnation before investigation leads to humiliation. So I have an opinion on a person. You really have to have some kind of knowledge on the person before you can make a criticism and accommodation on them. Otherwise, you end up looking like a fool. It was only after I read the Green Book that I actually understood it. But my conclusion was, now I see why the West wanted to get rid of him.
Yeah, it seems to be, because it was very suspicious why they wanted to get rid of Gaddafi after so many years.
But here's an example. His attitude was that if a member of his state wanted to have a farm, the Libyan state were to give him the land, give him the means to operate the farm, for instance, whether it was for growing crops or whether it was for agricultural needs, like cattle and such. And they were to provide all that for him, because the attitude was, well, he's only going to benefit the community that he's in by having that. So the government was to fund that. It's the same way with education. The government was to pay for all the education. If there was an education qualification that the person could not acquire in Libya, the Libyan state was then to finance that student to go to another country where he could get that qualification, finance while he was over there. Because when the student comes back qualified, who's going to benefit? The state's going to benefit.
Absolutely.
So those were the kind of ideas that you'll find in the Green Book. And
Wow.
certainly when you look at the light of the Western situation that we have at the moment, where education people leave with debt with 30,000 pounds of debt, and then you got this Muslim crackpot, the butcher of Libya or whatever terminology that they gave him. You can see why. It's a bit like Cuba at the moment. It has this bad reputation, but then you got Americans going to Cuba getting free healthcare and better healthcare than what they can get in the American states. You can see why. So it's the same thing with Gaddafi. I'm not just suggesting in the slightest he was the perfect role model and the perfect government with the perfect manifesto. What I'm saying is there's more to the guy than what the Western media would have you believe about him. And the Green Book that he wrote gives you an idea that he had a better attitude towards his population than what, say, the American Western civilization does to theirs.
Yeah, that definitely is a very refreshing take on Gaddafi, actually. And I'm not sure. Stop spamming. I know you've been to Iran. I visited Iran too. I found also same thing with Iran too. I found I was expecting a different picture altogether, and I found something extremely different. It's still religious, but it's very different. It's not the way the media paints it.
I've been there as well. I think, to be honest, my impression when I went was that the youth want to identify themselves not so much with the Islamic religion, but with the Persian history that they have. Because the Persians were the Medes and the Persians were a world empire for about, I think, if I stand to be corrected, it might be about 300 years. They were a world empire. Darius and Cyrus the Great, when they conquered Babylon, they were known culturally for being very tolerant people. That was their identity, as being very tolerant. And it seems that for me, that the Persian culture as it is now, or the Persian youth identity, wants to revert back to that Persian standard that they had in the past, as opposed to the Islamic identity that they have today. And having spoken to one or two Iranian people I know in my own community, that seems to be the correct conclusion to draw. And a friend of mine once asked, would you recommend going to Iran? And I says, the problem you'll have when you go to Iran now is that people are offended if you refuse hospitality. He has since been back 3 times. I'll give him a shout now, Dr. Octopus. That's my nickname for him. He has since been back to Iran 3 times, and I think that's a statement in itself.
Yeah, and even I visited Iraq and Iran, both of them at the same time, across the borders. American guards checked me. That's a whole different, very interesting, weird story. But yeah, for pilgrimage, we also go to Iran in Mashhad, right? You probably are aware of Mashhad, where Al-Raza, the 8th Imam, is buried there. And, he had his history with Mamun, and he also furthered the Shia ideology with Iran, with respect to Iran, at least. I went to Iran and Iraq, actually, and there's people coming to you offering their tea, and you're like, do I have to pay for this? Or no. They're speaking in Arabic, Persian. They're like, no, yalla, just have some tea, and they're delivering it inside the mosque, or the vicinity of the mosque, or like any public place, and they're like very hospitable. Even in Iraq too, a war-torn country like Iraq had such amazing hospitality. I was shocked. I was like, wow, this is, despite what the pain these people have gone through,
yeah,
there's still hope. There's still they're very kind and nice people.
Yeah, the less people have, the more humility they have, and the more hospitable they are. That's what I found in the world. In my experience of life, the less you have, the more you want to give.
Oh yeah, and especially around the Karbala district, right? So there's this family tradition. I think it's called Bani Asad, is the family. They claim that we promised Hussein that if he died in that battle, they would bury him over there, and they would, whoever wants to visit his grave and the companions, they promised Hussein that they would be hospitable towards them. So there's like this promise, and so I think there's very like tribal, like, oh, this tribe is associated with this hospitality. So they also take it with pride too, like there's the history behind our hospitality, that the visitors of the imam, like you are the imam's guest, and on behalf of the imam, we will provide you with the best possible hospitality.
Almost like a proxy representation.
Absolutely, it's like a spiritual proxy representation. Yes, absolutely.
Moosestaffah, what do you see as the future of Islam in general, and then Shia Islam? Personal opinion.
Wanna know? Okay, I'm personally very surprised how Shia Islam itself is not a separate religion already. I'm personally very surprised at that. Only because, like, ideologically, there's many differences, and I honestly cannot tell the future. However, it was interesting that at least with Islam, I feel like there will be more and more children from future generations who will start to question things, and there's also going to be people who will hold on to religion as well. So I don't think anything drastic is going to happen to religions in general, so to speak. I feel like they're just I was reading this book, 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, and he said that in times of skepticism, people want something to hold on to as a religion or as a faith or a belief, because it's within nature that you want a connection. You want to know that there's somebody out there looking out for you. So it's sort of like this solace, this comforting feeling. So I don't think the practices will evolve. Yes, how religious laws will change. Absolutely, the apologetics will continue. It's nothing drastic is going to change. Like it's going to be a more slower change. But I feel like the future of Islam in general is that the optimistic side of me says that eventually people will realize that there are some very disturbing laws, some very disturbing things in the primary sources of Islam, and will at least be able to acknowledge it and be able to, like, either they might reject it, or they will evolve their laws, or they will recognize that this is a different time, and now we have to evolve as well. We have to evolve with the times. In terms of, like, overall, like with the Shia Sunni conflict, I don't see it ending anytime soon. I really wish it did, personally. It's really pointless at this point, and, like, at least with this is very difficult, actually, because there's no solution to this, because Sunni writings and primary sources call the Shia Rawafid or Rafida, and I think we have to acknowledge our own biases and acknowledge our dark side and hatred first. That's the first step, and then we can sort of, like, come up with solutions. We need to have open dialogue. We need the Muslim community as a whole, I'm not talking about Shia Muslims only, as a whole, needs to be a lot more accepting of new ideas, accepting of criticism, and also accepting of the fact that their founder was not exactly perfect. So they have to accept that. It's the reality of the situation.
Well, I mean, they're 600 years behind Christianity, and it took them so long to be able to acknowledge one another, and then eventually get to celebrate Christmas together in some form. So what I have noticed is that particularly Iranians were very happy and very quick to let go of Islam when the Shah came in, and they very quickly turned to a secular kind of, well, it wasn't really, it was a monarchy, but this concept of there not being an Islamic state. Then they welcomed it back, and now they're saying, actually, no, the Shah time was better than now. So let's go back to the original form. So where do you see this pendulum eventually come to a rest?
I think, like, is this in regards to, like, are we, like, what do you call it, turning away from religion and then going back to religion? I feel like, okay, I feel like this pendulum will go back and forth, because there will be times, again, remember, when there was a study, Religion for Breakfast. He does this study, like he was talking about the study, this guy. He said that, times of war, harsh times, makes people more religious. It makes people, more, draw close together because they're holding on to each other. So it really depends on the political and economic circumstances. If Iran's economy does get better, they will start moving away from the ideology. It's not so much, like recognizing the ideology, because let's face it, I would say 80% of the population won't even bother reading the tafsirs of the Quran or the Quran itself. They won't even bother doing that. It's sort of like you have to, sort of like create this environment of like economic prosperity. And you have to like fix your laws to, like, you have to change your laws or amend them, so to speak. Because growing up in Pakistan too, we're still recovering from, there was a brief period of 11 years between the time of Zia ul Haq, between 1977 and 1988, where he started like imposing like various forms of Sharia law and declared jihad against Russia and Afghanistan. And this really crippled Pakistan. It crippled Pakistan because it's now like trapped in this religious hotbed. And even the foundation of Pakistan was very founded on like, oh, Muslims should have a separate state. Like this religious aspect of it, we've still not been able to escape that. And it saddens me that we, like with the Muslims, at least with the partition, at least the Muslims were a little more tolerant of each other. But then that post 1988, there's been more Shia versus Sunni conflicts within Pakistan as well. And
yeah,
absolutely, it was not as bad in Pakistan because, like, Pakistan doesn't see itself as a Middle Eastern country, and it sees it's a South Asian country. Let's face it. So South
this
Asian.
is why you have this MENA area, Middle East, near Asia.
Yeah. It's like it's so. I was having this conversation with my father, he's still a Muslim. He's very open-minded, but I recommended that, one thing that could save Islam, or one thing that ideology, if you want to save Islam spiritually or like stop it from fighting, you want to spread the teachings of Sufism. And Sufism is perceived as the Buddhist version of Islam, like Buddhism and Islam. Like, the only downside of that will be you'll create a lot of cults, weird cults. But I'd rather have weird dancing cults over ISIS cutting the throats of innocent people and having sex slaves. I'd rather have weird cults doing weird rituals than that.
Okay, but is Shia Islam accepted in Pakistan?
Yeah, it is. Like, legally speaking, yes, it's like it's very secular in that matter, legally speaking, in Pakistan. However, there's still like internal biases, because remember, Shia Muslims initially were a Hanafi majority, basically, initially. But now the Hanbali or the Wahhabi ideology is spreading. So the Wahhabi ideology or Salafi ideology has very many, like, they have a very, what do you call it? In Pakistan, at least, with the people itself, they have a very, like, either it's sort of like you're looked down upon as a Shia, basically, you're looked down upon, or whether it's someone who's nice to you or whether someone's mean to you.
Is it more like Ahmadiyas or what?
Yeah, it's kind of like Ahmadiyya, except one step away, basically, one step away. And that Ahmadiyya thing, Ahmadiyya is like legally declared, oh, you're not Muslims, you're Qadiani.
Yeah.
I've been accused of being a Qadiani sometimes. Like, I pointed out, like, I'm like, no, guess again. Like, I'm a Shia, not Qadiani. So yeah, it's very, like, with Ahmadi. There was this case. You guys heard of the case where the mullahs wanted to declare Ahmadi Muslims as non-Muslims, but the Sunni schools of thought couldn't find anything in that case. I read the details of the case. So they had to have a Shia ulama actually provide more cases to sort of like, you know, what do you call it, destroy the ideology of Ahmadiyism. And that's where the court rewarded, like not rewarded, but like declared that Ahmadi is, and it's sort of like a non-Muslim.
Yeah, but this Mirzan guy is crazy.
The what guy? Sorry.
The Mirzan guy, the head of the Qadianis, Ahmadiyas.
Oh yeah, he was definitely like,
I forgot his name now. Come on, please.
Ahmad Ghulam. Okay, wait, what was his name? Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadian. Is that the
there
name?
You go. Yes.
Yeah.
I just remember the Mirza. Yeah.
Yeah, the Mirza, and I've not read much about him. I'm trying to do my research, and there's a lot to do.
Oh, he was totally bonkers.
Oh yeah, he declared himself like that's the gist of it. He declared himself like as this messiah, and yeah, he's just a messianic movement in the time of like colonialism. So
did Rashid Khalifa.
Rashid Khalifa, yeah, and it did. I don't know much about these figures, and even Aga Khan. To Aga Khan, it's a bit more of a funny situation when in Aga Khan, which is the 7 Ismaili, they claim that they're descendants of. They don't recognize Raza as the Imam, but I think they stop at either Jafar al-Sadiq or Musa Kazim, and one of their sons, Ismail. One of the I forgot which generation it was. They sort of they declared him as the Imam, and then Ismail's descendants. However, the Aga Khan the current Aga Khan, his history can be traced back to Afghanistan and Persia, where the British-Afghan War happened for the first time. So that's where his proper history can be traced back. So he claims to be descended from them, but doesn't add up.
Okay, then Moosestaffahh, then it's just we just say thank you very much for this. We're just going to go and read a little bit of Quran. If you want to stick around, you're more than welcome to. If you want to go and do your own thing, you're also welcome to do so. What I must add, and I'm going to second what Thunderous has said, is that you are somebody who is definitely able to articulate thoughts and ideas in a very eloquent way, and this is something that I appreciate, because we've had some people on here who were absolutely not able to do so, and this is why it's much appreciated that there's somebody here who can sort of present the idea that it is comprehensive to and comprehensible to others. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for your work in that. And if you have any more topics, please don't let anything stop you. If you do enjoy talking about this, and if you do enjoy other things, then you're always welcome, to join us and just say, listen, give me the link. You're always welcome. Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah, like I'd love to also hear your ideas too, and basically, I personally believe that I'm not knowledgeable enough too, because the more I've still not read enough, I personally feel. So it's the best.
We never have. Come on. do you have, if you want to send me anything, just do so, use Facebook or whatever. And do you have a YouTube channel?
I don't have a YouTube channel yet.
Congratulations.
Oh, okay. Okay, this is my YouTube debut, practically speaking.
Okay.
I do have a channel. I used to be very very Shia, kind of like I felt like I was destined to be a zakir or a speaker. But then now I'm more on the research side now, because I'd rather prefer this than preaching, because personally speaking, I see speakers that are, yeah, I can shit on my community or leaders all I want. I have that right. I have that right. Like, you people, you need to make your references correct. Tell us proper stories. Like, don't make shit up. You know what I mean? Like, don't make shit up out of thin air. So yeah, there's still a lot of with Islam in general. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. Sorry if I go off on a tangent. I go way, because there's just so many things, and yeah, we'll probably further discuss. Just the last thing I wanted to add. with just a little nitbit I wanted to add to what do you call it? We may discuss this another time. There's a book called Salim bin Qais or Sulaim bin Qais. It's the first Shia Hadith book. It was authored between 692 to 743 AD approximately. This is what the time period is, and this is where the this is the first report of what do you call it? The first disagreement on who was supposed to succeed the prophet. So there's that, and a lot of Shias are not even aware of this particular Hadith book. So this one, I would love to discuss for the next time. And also Abdul Malik. Also, it was sort of like more on Abdul Malik's relationship with Zain al-Abidin. It was a bit of back and forth because sometimes they hated each other, sometimes they liked each other. It was just weird, it's odd. But yeah, that's all I have to say for now.
Okay, Thunderous, last ideas?
No, I just want to say what a welcome, refreshing change it is to have a coherent Muslim who it's been a pleasure to listen to and enlightening, because sometimes when you growing up in a certain background, there is a bias and a prejudice, and it's refreshing to hear someone speak about their faith in a palatable way rather than the normal that, as Stops has mentioned, that we've had on the show in a very unpalatable way, in a way that's not agreeable. And we try to have I feel from the discussion that you've presented this evening that you would disagree, or we would disagree, in a very respectful way, and that's how it's supposed to be. In a respectful way, you can agree to disagree and do it in a very courteous way while still holding a mutual respect for each other. And I discern that is what would happen if we ever had discussions where we disagree. And I would love to hear you back on the show. I really would, and I'm looking forward to conversing with you again. But my concluding comment would be this: if you wanted the Shias and the Muslims to unite, maybe Salman Rushdie should write another satanic verse.
I actually have the Salman Rushdie satanic verses copy in my just on my shelf right now. I'm looking at it.
Then you'll remember way back then when he wrote the satanic verses, it was the only time in history in my lifetime that the Sunni and the Shia united.
And I feel like that was so I feel like, yeah, it did one good thing, but it was in the most violent way possible.
Yeah.
So violent, unnecessarily. This book had I read the book and I was like, it's nothing. This is nothing. This is why and will Muslims still react to this very day? They'll have very passive aggressive comments towards this book, and it's oh, I love you, Salman Rushdie.
Okay, guys, then we're not going to go and start any new Quran sentences today. I think it's ridiculous. I think this was an interesting insight into the origins and the history of Islam and Shia Islam in particular. I will end, as usual, with the Hadith of the week.
Absolutely.
Drinking honey. In other words, I'm continuing with the medical hadiths that I started 2 or 3 shows ago. Narrated Abu Sa'id. This is from, I must stress this today, from the Sunni version. This is from the Sunni hadith, okay? So narrated Abu Sa'id. A man came to the Prophet and said, my brother has got loose motions. Do I need to explain loose motions? I don't know if I need to explain this. Today, I think we would say he's got diarrhea or something. The Prophet said, let him drink honey. The man again said, I made him drink honey, but that made him worse. The Prophet said, Allah has said the truth, and the abdomen of your brother has told a lie.
What is the source of this hadith? I need to
and this is Sahih Bukhari 771-614, and it shows you how easy it is. If you have diarrhea, you can just tell your stomach you're lying, and your stomach will say, yes, boss, okay, fine, I'm not going to have diarrhea anymore now. Thank you very much. Yeah, okay.
God.
Okay, guys, that's it for today. Thank you very much. This was the Jinn&Tonic show for today, the 19th of July. We shall see you next Friday. And if anybody has any topics, any requests, any wishes or something, please feel free to let us know. Otherwise, we'll see you all young and fresh again next Friday. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye, Moosestaffahh.
Bye, guys. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.